Hey everyone, I think we're live. It's Susan Pierce Thompson here with Molly Larkin and Benjamin Schaefer. Oh my goodness, there's a lot of people here. I'm just going to welcome some people in the chat thread here. Oh, Stephanie from Massachusetts, Audrey from New Jersey, George from Tucson, Gloria from Florida, Pamela from Michigan, Jenna from Dallas, Texas, Andrea from London, UK, Pam from East Hartford, Gail from Texas, Susan from Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, Stephanie from Northern Virginia, Kathy Cox from beautiful Lake Tahoe, California. Hi, Kathy. Oh my goodness, look at this. Look at this beautiful. Oh, Al from North Yorkshire, UK, Aaron from Colorado, more folks from Colorado, Annie from Tulsa, Oklahoma, Marie from upstate New York. We've got a lot of people here. Oh my goodness, we have 1,584 people live and more people pouring into the room as we speak. This is amazing. People from all over the world. Carola from Germany, hi. Amazing. Lyndall from Perth, Western Australia. That's so amazing. Because Lyndall, if I put my fingers on either end of a globe, I'm in Rochester, New York. You in Perth, Australia are exactly on the other side of the globe from me. Like exactly. Awesome. Look at this. Lots of people from Seattle. I see lots of people from Colorado, lots of people from Florida. Oh, beautiful. Welcome everybody. Welcome to our live stream event, Free from the Inside Out, an introduction to the inner work. We're going to go ahead and get started here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to mute the chat thread. For now, we're going to unmute it at the end for questions, for Q&A. The reason I mute the chat thread is because it's the best part of the webinar, and that means that all of us will be totally like focused back on the chat thread if we leave it up. And research shows that actually when we multitask like that, like diverting our attention over to something like a chat thread, not only do we sort of have a hard time paying attention, but we also don't enjoy it as much. Like our enjoyment gets killed by that task switching. So I want us all to have a wonderful time. And that means that the chat thread is now silent. But we will have time for Q&A at the end for sure. And it's already 5 minutes past the hour, so we are going to go ahead and get started. So hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Susan Pierce Thompson, and today we're talking about the inner work. We're talking about what it takes to get free from the inside out. And I'm going to be introducing you to two of my very best friends in the world, Molly and Benjamin. That's going to be coming in a little bit here. But I wanted to start us off by just setting the context of what we mean by the inner work, what the inner work has meant to me in my life. Gosh, where to begin? You know, I got put in therapy when I was in like 6th or 7th grade. I was not a super functional kid. And that really started my journey of the inner work. I started to, you know, look inside really at that very young age, whatever that was, like 6th or 7th grade. But my real diving into the inner work didn't start until I got clean and sober at the age of 20. If you know my story, I did drugs as a teenager, like serious drugs, you know, crystal meth and crack cocaine, and burned my life to the ground. And when I got into the rooms of 12-step programs when I was 20, I put down drugs and alcohol. I've been clean and sober now for 23 years, not a drink, not a drug in 23 years. Yay. But what that really meant for me is that I had the opportunity to start looking inside. And I did that through working the 12 steps. And the 12 steps are one model of doing the inner work, sort of thinking about powerlessness and surrender, and then looking at our relationships with a higher power, with other people, thinking about forgiveness, what do we do with resentments, and then, you know, learning how to meditate, learning how to pray, learning how to continue to sort of look inside and take personal inventory, and then ultimately learning how to be of service. And I worked the 12 steps. I'm pretty certifiable. I worked the 12 steps in 5 different 12-step programs over the years. And then over the couple of decades that I've been in recovery, I've explored other methods of doing the work. Things like, you know, Byron Katie's The Work. She actually calls her method The Work, which is kind of funny if you're talking about the inner work, not to be confused with the inner work, globally speaking. And, meditation workshops, silent retreats, things like that. And we're going to be talking about the inner work here. And we've distilled the inner work down to what we think are the core essential elements of doing the inner work. There's 4 pillars, we call them 4 pillars of doing the inner work. And in order to talk about this with you, I want to introduce someone to you. She's very special in my life. Her name's Molly Larkin. She's on staff here at Brightline Eating. She's our health coach. She's an RN, but she's also a certified life coach. And she helps people do the inner work. And I think it was about, what was it, like 5-6 years ago, something like that. I was trying a different method for my food. I was trying to not do bright lines, and I stepped away from that path, and I was floundering with my food. And Molly and I were friends, and I reached out to her. I remember calling her. I was in my car. It was a rainy night, and I was really despondent and not doing well. And I knew that Molly also had struggled with her own food and was in a good place with it now. And I reached out to her for support, and she helped me to really sink into the reality that I could be good right here in the moment, even if my food felt off base and off kilter. Molly she's a 10 on the susceptibility scale, but she's the only person that I've ever met who's been able to find her own path with food without really relying on strict bright lines from the outside. She has found her path with food from the inside, from doing the inner work. And that always impresses the bejesus out of me, because I have always needed external structures to be able to manage my food. And Molly's been able to do it through the inner work. And she is, without a doubt, the person in my life who's like the most qualified, I think, to teach the inner work, because it's really the core of her life path and the core of her sanity, the thing that she comes back to over and over again, both with her food and with other things. And after I started Brightline Eating, I realized, well, we're going to need to give people something, a path for doing the inner work, because it doesn't really work to take people's crutch, people's go-to solution out of their life, right? If, a lot of us are used to using food as our most common reaction to life. And when you take that away from people and you sort of put their food in order, then it's like, well, what's their solution now? Like, what do they do when they feel, anxious or uncomfortable? Or, if you're not going to eat, you need to have some other way to sort of connect with your inner experience, right? And so there was this magical evening where Molly and I were sitting in a little Ethiopian restaurant having dinner together. And I was talking with her about how we'd reached this juncture where the Brightline Eating Bootcamp was up and rolling, and people were getting, this magical transformation. But then it only sort of took them so far. And we didn't have a way to help people do the inner work after that, like sort of an equivalent of the 12 steps. But the 12 steps didn't feel quite right, in particular because of the 12 steps are very heavily reliant on God, which is fine for a lot of people, but not for everybody. And I wanted something that was more inclusive and sort of an umbrella process, that would really speak to everybody, regardless of their spiritual path or lack thereof or whatever. And Molly, her eyes started to sparkle, and she was like, oh, I would be so interested in developing a course like that with you. So she and I sat down together and we started to develop it. The other thing I just want to say about Molly before I turn it over to her is that I think we all have a person in our life that is sort of the embodiment of calm and wisdom and compassion and that feeling of coming home, whether it's a favorite teacher or a beloved grandmother or a best friend, or just somebody in whose presence we always feel safe and seen and heard and held. And really, Molly is that person for me. Like, every time I get into her presence, this feeling of calm and well-being comes over me. And I think when I introduce you to her, you'll see why. There's just this presence about her that is, it's second to none. So we've developed a course on doing the inner work. And we're going to talk about that at the end, but the meat of this live stream is, Molly's going to talk a little bit, and then I'm going to present some science, so that you understand that doing the inner work is not just about feeling better. It actually changes us at a very, very deep level, at a cellular level, at a genetic level. And as a scientist, I like to talk about that kind of stuff. So I'm going to talk about that a little bit. And we're going to introduce Benjamin, who's also one of our best friends, and is with us on this journey of offering the inner work. And so without further ado, I'm going to pass it over to Molly, and she's going to share a little bit about her journey with the inner work, because she brings a very rich history to the work that she does here at Brightline Eating. So Molly, let me see if I can get the technology right here to get you to be the presenter.
I think you did it. Sue.
Yeah, you think? I'm never quite sure. Everyone, this is Molly Larkin. Hey, Molly.
Hi, everybody. Hi, Susan. Thank you for that. Such a beautiful introduction. I'm honored that I get to be that kind of person in your life, and grateful to be here with Susan and Benjamin and with all of you sharing this time on Saturday afternoon, evening, whatever time it is for you. It's really an honor that you'd show up for this. So my experience with the inner work, I could tell this story like 5 different ways, as we all could if we reflect on pieces of our lives. I remember my mom telling me I was a mystic when I was maybe 15. And I don't think that's because I had some kind of special spiritual wisdom or something like that. It's because I was a desperate seeker. I really relate to that quality of like being a seeker from a very young age. And so I started, I think my first kind of, the first place I found something that fed my hunger, my deep hunger, was poetry when I was a young kid. And then later, I think a lot of that same seeking kind of energy is actually what led me to a lot of suffering by way of addictive behaviors. Susan mentioned food, and I struggled mightily with bulimia for over a decade. And I swore that if I ever found a way through that, I would do something to help other people. And then later with drugs, with alcohol, with just about anything that would get me out of this constricted sense of self that I kind of lived with at baseline. And what I didn't see at the time, but what I do see now, is that all of that, whether it was the seeking and later that turned into some kind of compulsive spiritual seeking, or the drugs, the alcohol, the food, all of that was really my best attempt at a solution. So, fast forward, I did come through my disordered eating, my profoundly distorted relationship with food and my body. And I didn't just do it by meditating as in a cave, as, one might imagine when Susan says I got free from the inside out. But I do have a very different perspective than Susan does about food and weight. And but where Susan and I really meet is that without the foundation of some really deep inner work that goes beyond just symptom relief, we'll keep mistaking our attempt at a solution for the problem and going after that. So my path, my seeking heart, which has been such a blessing and such a burden at the same time, has led me to a career as a psychiatric nurse, and a lot of experience and interest and study in many of the modalities that Susan just described. I've been deeply drawn to and am a student of Byron Katie's work. And I do a lot of body-based kind of trauma education. I've, as Susan mentioned, become a certified life coach for the past 6 years. So I work with people one-on-one in that capacity, and lots of other modalities that I'm interested in: acceptance and commitment therapy, mindfulness, meditation, yoga. And it's true that those things really are, the inner work really is the organizing principle of my life. And it's not because, again, it's not because I'm especially spiritual. I don't really believe that people are spiritual or not. It's more because when I don't relate to myself in a way that goes beyond just the surface level, I suffer badly. So basically, my life and my work is about it's about moving beyond striving and working harder, and into a whole other way of being. So a lot of what I do with people is orient them back to their deepest and truest selves. And that may sound a little vague right now as I kind of give an overview, but I think as we talk more and you guys can ask questions, it'll become a little clearer what I mean by that. I like to say, and I often say throughout the course, that this is not a self-improvement program. And I think people hear that and often they're kind of disappointed. But it's true, it's not a self-improvement program. I find that, again, that striving and that working hard to live up to some perfect image, some more perfect image we have of ourselves, is a really painful way to organize our lives. And for many of us, it's really the default mode. And that's not to say that I don't think ambition or strategies or tools are enormously helpful. I think that they can be. However, what I find is that by the time someone's coming to a course like this, they've usually gathered a lot of information, and so what they need is not a lot of new information necessarily. And that's not to say that we don't include new information in the course, but the course, again, is more about a new way of being than it is about a whole different way of like doing things. So really, it's not so much about information as it is about integration and going deep. You know, it's tricky when I say it's not a self-improvement program, because we're smart and we have these minds. And for many of us, our thinking and our striving and our pushing has come in very handy for solving all kinds of problems in the world. It can also bring us a lot of praise and approval and recognition. But I find often coupled with that is this way of relating to ourselves and the world as if we're kind of a problem to be solved, as if there's always something like better right around the corner. We're always kind of chasing the next moment. And so even when that's working, even when things are going our way, there can be a sense of either stuckness or chronic just kind of dissatisfaction. And again, it's a painful way to live. So I'd love to introduce people to a whole other way. It's almost like we just jumped the track. We're not so interested in changing our thoughts or thinking positive. Not that those don't have their place, they do, but they tend to only go so far. So this program, the work that I do and that we do with people through this framework that we're going to describe, is pretty radical departure from most of the programs out there, most of the self-help out there. And again, that's nothing against those kind of more self-help, more kind of go get 'em kind of programs. I've benefited from some of that work for sure. what we're doing here is going deeper and really kind of changing our operating system, changing our default operating system from one that sees problems everywhere to one that can be at ease no matter what's going on. So I'll talk more about this, break this down, maybe get a little bit clearer. But I know that Susan had promised to share with you this one really powerful question that I think really typifies some of what sets this course apart from other courses. It's a question that has really changed my life, not just asking the question, but actually living from the question. And so when we say it's a different type of course, I think this question is a good one that you can carry in your back pocket as you consider, if you want to join us, and even if not, that you'll find useful to carry along the way with you. So Susan, I don't see you, but I'm going to go ahead and switch. There you are. I'm going to go ahead and switch back to you to share this question.
Yeah, totally. Thank you, Molly. I'm one of those people that was really unmoored when Molly said, it's not a self-improvement project. You're not a self-improvement project. And I'm like, wait, but I am. Like, I relate to myself so much that way. I'm always trying to improve myself. And the idea of taking that away, like, I didn't know what is it then? Of course it's a self-improvement project. Yeah, I didn't even know what to make of that. It was really years of knowing Molly before I understood what the inner work could be if it wasn't about relating to myself as a self-improvement project. And yeah, so I've been through Bright Line Healing, which is the course we're going to talk about. And in it, Molly introduces this question, and she has us write it on a sticky note. So if you have a sticky note around or just a pad of paper or whatever, I recommend that you do this. I've got it, actually, I'm in my office right now. I've got it right on the wall. So I'm going to pull it right here off the wall. It's right sitting above my laptop where I see it all the time. It's the only thing up here. And I don't know if you can see this, but it's a very simple question. What if nothing is wrong? What if nothing is wrong? What if nothing is wrong? That's the question. And I think it's really tempting for me to relate to my life as, this is a good moment, this is a bad moment, this is a good occurrence, this is a bad occurrence. This is going well, this is going badly, this is right, this is wrong. Both like for my kids, like, okay, so here's an example. It's really hard sometimes to sit in the question of what if nothing is wrong? Like, for example, I have 3 daughters. David and I have 3 daughters, Alexis, Zoe, and Maya. And Alexis and Zoe are twins. They're 9. And they were born micro preemies. They were 1 pound. They were under 1.5 pounds when they were born. 1 pound, 6 ounces and 1 pound, 7 ounces. And Zoe had a very rocky time in neonatal intensive care. She was in intensive care for 4 months and she almost died over and over again. And, she's healthy today and doing well. She wears glasses, and we just found out that she needs hearing aids. And, what a heartbreaking thing to learn about your daughter. And she's upset about it. She's concerned about being unpopular and wearing these hearing aids. And, there's a classic moment where it's easy to think that something's wrong. Like that just feels wrong. And sitting in this question of what if nothing is wrong, it just changes the landscape. It changes the landscape. And not to say that there aren't occurrences that are tougher than others, because of course there are. Of course there are. But relating to the fabric of life and the fabric of the universe as a series of things that just are, and regardless of their valence, positive, negative, whatever, they're lessons, right? I mean, I couldn't be the person that I am now if I hadn't gone through a lot of hard stuff. And looking back now, you know, my drug addiction, my food addiction, were those things bad things? Were they wrong? You know, as I was going through those times, were things wrong? Well, you know, a lot of good has come out of that in my life. I didn't know how to relate to people before I got into recovery. And the benefit of my addiction has been a whole new way of relating to people in the world, and a set of skills that I now get to bring to every interaction. I get to experience myself in the world as a functional, effective relator, as a friend among friends, a person among people, someone who gets to experience, you know, being looked up to, or being a leader, or, you know, things that I never was before my addiction and my recovery, right? So it would have been really easy as I was sitting, don't mean to be graphic, but as I was sitting in a crack house, it'd be really easy to say, okay, something's wrong. And in a way, something was wrong, right? I definitely needed to change some stuff, but really the things that happen in our lives and the relationships that feel tricky and all that, there is a sort of a meta perspective of what is, and there's always a lesson in it. And there's always a way in which everything is exactly as it should be, exactly as it should be. And, you know, even right now, I'm in a just a kind of a swirly spot in my life. I'm just coming back from a trip to Utah, and there's boxes all over the house. I set up this behind me. It kind of looks nice, but really the whole house is in shambles. There's boxes everywhere. And we're moving on Tuesday, and then leaving for a family vacation. Oh my goodness. Bless us, that we booked and paid for like over a year ago. We had no idea that it was going to be 2 days after closing on a new house. And this thing's going on with my daughter, Zoe. There's all kinds of swirly stuff going on. And it'd be really easy to think that some of that's wrong, or hard or whatever. But doing the inner work has left me with sort of, I guess, it feels like more of a bird's eye perspective, but also like a minute by minute perspective, like an in the moment perspective that allows me to be in my skin and whole and at home, kind of no matter what the circumstances are, you know? So anyway, I encourage you to write down this question: what if nothing is wrong? And just put it somewhere where you can see it, and where it will catch your eye often. Because what I find is sometimes I see it and my heart just sings and I resonate with that idea. Oh yeah, nothing's wrong. And then other times it kind of shocks me because I realize I've been thinking in a mode where I'm absolutely thinking that there's things that are wrong. And so, yeah, it's funny to me how just the presence of this question in my life can be a grounding force, and can bring me back to a way of relating to my life and the things that are going on in it, in just a much healthier way, a way that's full of possibility and growth and hope and peace, you know, acceptance. So yeah, I promised I would share with you the special question, the magical question. That's the question. What if nothing's wrong? I encourage you to write it down, get it somewhere, and somewhere where you can see it. And, you know, this is just one little piece that's part of this bigger framework. I mentioned the 4-pillar framework. So Molly and I sort of sat down and we thought, what is inner work? Like, we've both done so many things, tried so many paths. And we had the sense that there was a bigger framework than either of us had ever encountered in any of the myriad approaches and modalities and frameworks that we had experienced in the past. And so we really sort of put our heads to it and we thought, well, what is the meta framework for the inner work? And we came up with one that we came up with this now, I don't know, 2.5 years ago, 3 years ago, something like that. I don't know, around there. And it feels like it's passing the test of time. Like it still feels true that these 4 pillars constitute the inner work, kind of no matter what approach or framework you take. So I'm going to pass it back over to Molly so she can present the 4 pillars to you. It's just for your own consideration, your own edification, your own growth process. So you can think of your journey with the inner work, however you do it in your life, and see how these pillars relate to the frameworks that you're familiar with. So, Molly, I'm going to pass it back over to you. I'm hoping the technology of passing things back and forth is working. I think it is. Molly, you should be on again.
Yes, I am on. Thanks, Susan. Yeah, and thanks for talking about that question. I always like to just add a little footnote to the question because it can be a little jarring. Like obviously there's a lot that's wrong when you look around the world, you know, especially when you really start looking. And so again, I just want to invite you to just check out what happens when you ask the question. It's not a question that you need to answer. It's not like a new belief to take on. Oh, there's nothing wrong. And Susan, I could so relate. Of course, it's easier to feel like there's nothing wrong when things are kind of going along. But it is a question, in my experience, that stops the mind for a moment in a really powerful way. Because when we have that orientation that something is wrong, we get into that hyper-vigilant kind of state, and we live in past future. So we're not very available right here and now. I find that question so valuable in just bringing me back here, right back here. So I'm going to share with you all the 4-pillar framework that we came up with that we think kind of sums up the foundational processes involved in any path of deep inner work. So I'm going to share my screen here with you guys. And let's see. Bear with me here. Try that again. Susan, is that showing my PowerPoint?
No. At the top, there's that. It looks like a TV screen, and it says turn screen share on.
Okay, it just showed up as an option, and then it disappeared. So let's see. I'm going to try it one more time. So Susan, I have my PowerPoint up, and I should be able to just share it, but it's not giving me that option.
Do you have your PowerPoint? Is it taking up the whole screen, or is it in just a window?
Let's see. No, it's taking up the whole screen.
Okay. So all right, I'm going to walk you through it. In PowerPoint, you need to go up to the top. Here.
Thanks, folks.
You basically need to share. You need to put it. You need to set it to share an individual. You need to put it into an individual window.
I have it as an individual window. Browse
you
by
do?
individual.
Browse by individual window.
Yeah, I remember that.
Okay. Then it shouldn't take up the whole screen. Maybe minimize it a little bit. Like let's just make it a little smaller.
It's just not even giving me the option of when I click on share screen, it doesn't show my PowerPoint at all. So I'll just go ahead without it.
Okay.
I'm trying one last time. All right, sorry folks. So I'm just going to go ahead and talk to you without the PowerPoint. The 4-pillar framework.
Put it back on your face then, so we can see it.
Yeah. Okay. So when Susan asked me to create this program, I really meditated about, thought about, stewed about, obsessed about, what is it that is the basic foundation, right, of any inner work worth its salt? What really makes a process of inner work worthwhile? And before I jump into the 4 pillars, I just want to say that part of what's difficult when we talk about this thing we're calling the inner work is that it's really it's a non-linear process. It's kind of an organic process, and it's a process that's initiated in my way of seeing kind of by grace, and often that shows up in the form of a lot of pain, not always, but many of you watching, I imagine, have been on a path of inner work for a very long time, and for some of you, maybe this is the first taste that you have had of the inner work, and either way is totally fine, because what I want you to do is just see if anything that we share today rings as true for you. I think that any path of inner work that's worth its salt is all about putting the inner authority back with the individual. It's not so much about looking out to find the right way to do things, right? It's more about coming into contact with your inner GPS. And that inner sense of kind of direction, or it may have been covered over by many years of conditioning. It often is. And it's still there. It's still available. And no matter how much we've run away with addictions, compulsions, just hiding, it's always available. So the path of the inner work, to me, ultimately, it's not about dressing up kind of the false self. It's about coming home to the true self. So we call our course Bright Line Healing. Susan referred to that. And the first part of it is called Coming Home, because that's exactly what it is. It's about coming home, recovering that sense of inner authority, deep autonomy. So I'm going to just look at my notes here a little bit, because I have them as we go through the pillars. So pillar 1 is awareness. And we begin by cultivating awareness because really that's so critical. Many of us, there's a lot of research that's coming out that shows that we are not nearly as self-aware as we like to think that we are, but that there are very simple ways to cultivate more awareness. And so we tend to mistake ourselves for that little voice in our mind that's always talking, right? And we could call that voice the ego. But we experience our lives through the filter of our thinking mind, and we mistake that for life itself. So when we're totally identified with that voice, we think our thoughts are objective reality. And most of us walk around most of the time kind of operating from our thinking selves, like that's what's running the show. And the problem with that is that when we live from the neck up, we are totally disconnected, disembodied for one thing, and disconnected with our sense of inner aliveness. And that's to say we're totally disconnected from life itself. So awareness is really about making contact with the living moment and with the presence of life living through us. So the work of pillar 1 is about cultivating awareness, about noticing that we are not our thoughts, right? We're not the thinker, but we are the one that's aware of our thinking. And all of us have heard this. This is not like new information, but we do have a lot of very simple and very we try to do this work in these little titrated doses so that you're just dropping in this other way of being throughout your day, throughout the weeks. The weeks add up, and you find that you have this other way of operating in the world. Like I said, changing our default operating system. So this shift from seeing ourselves as the thinker, right, to experiencing ourselves as awareness may not seem like much when we talk about it. But that's really the shift from seeing ourselves, seeing life as a problem to be solved, and seeing life from the spaciousness of like, what if nothing's wrong? Like just a much more spacious way of being in the world. So that's what we do in awareness. And when we're operating from that more heart-centered, embodied place, we have access to the intelligence of the heart, the intelligence of the gut. And there's some really cool science on what's going on with that. And Susan illuminates that for us in awareness, pillar 1. So once we have that basic foundation, we move to pillar 2, which is surrender. And so exploring awareness, noticing that we're most often identified with that thinker, that voice in our minds, most often caught up in a story about life rather than in life itself. Like I said, that results in us being pretty disconnected from the present moment. And we all know what it feels like to enter that state of flow, that sense of being like just outside of the bounds of time. You might find it when you're gardening or dancing or working, if you have a job that you can really get immersed in, writing. And people often describe the feeling that they kind of get out of the way and that time kind of slows down. Personal thinking slows down. They might feel more inspired toward creative action or even non-action. You know, those days when, you know, if you have a baseline level of anxiety, and there's days when suddenly maybe you're at the beach or maybe you're just home and you can just be. That sense of being entirely engaged with life, just as it is. That's surrender. And surrender could be described very simply as just a yes to what is. A yes, an acceptance of what is. And of course, most of us don't live that way most of the time. By the time we're adults, we have a whole lot of evidence to support the idea that, one, the world is not a very safe place, whether it's emotionally, physically, whatever. We have trauma stored up in our bodies. And we also have a lot of evidence to support the idea that if we don't make things happen or prevent things from happening, that nothing good will ever happen. That's kind of the bedrock of our society, in fact. You know, more is better. We really believe in the myth of like every man for themselves, especially in Western society. Work harder, be successful, you're almost there, keep striving. It's like if it's not working, it's probably going to work right around the corner, just push harder. And as I said earlier, living that way, you may be able to achieve a lot of external markers of success. But here's the thing. It's like what you practice on the way to where you want to go is what you'll have when you get there. So many of us are so burned out from this kind of cultural inheritance of pushing and striving that kind of thinking that we have to wrangle ourselves and those around us in order to kind of like make life work. If all of that desire and ambition isn't coming from a place of being engaged with and surrendered to life, in other words, if it comes from a place of like striving for some imagined future rather than like being surrendered to the task at hand, it's not ultimately going to be satisfying. By the time you get to where you want to be, you're going to be feel kind of pushed and constricted and exhausted. And really, ultimately, nothing we want will satisfy us permanently because life only exists in the present moment. And I know that seems so obvious, but many of us have never stopped to really see that's the case. So surrender is about moving beyond the fear-based desires of the small self and into, and again, that's that little thinking voice in our head. That's what I mean when I say the small self. It's not bad, but it's just it's very concerned with personal comfort, with avoiding pain. And we work with that in the course by meeting it and by loving it. Again, that's pretty counter to the way that a lot of people work with those harder to accept parts of our experience. But basically, we want to move beyond this small self and into contact with this larger intelligence, this intelligence that breathes us, that makes the sun come out. Call it whatever you want, or call it nothing at all. The experience of life itself. So, in short, in Pillar 2, surrender, we practice surrendering fear-based demands of the small self, ego, to the love-based desires of the capital S self. And this has nothing to do with being good or like giving up your things you want. Like we work with heart's desire in the course and really getting clear about what it is that we really desire and moving toward that in a way so that it's satisfying. Getting where we want to go is a satisfying experience, an experience where we can really be in life instead of in the future. So I was going to share this Michael Singer quote. I'll read it to you. He says, if the natural unfolding of the process of life can create and take care of the entire universe, is it really reasonable for us to assume that nothing good will happen unless we force it to? So again, there's some really cool science on surrender that Susan shares in the course. So each pillar, Susan will bring in the science elements. So as we have explored awareness and then surrender, we will have a better gauge of what it feels like to be at home with ourselves and with life. For many people, it's like a place that they've touched many times and haven't been able to live in a sustained way. And for some people, it's like a very radical shift in their experience. So by the time we've worked through the first two pillars, we've all had a taste of that. And we have some tools and some skills to access the present moment more often. And what happens is we'll definitely come up against roadblocks. We come up with places that we get stuck, ways that we continue to stay really identified with our small selves or locked against life, struggling, striving, patterns of thinking that keep us out of presence, difficulty in relationships. All of this we see kind of as good news because it shows us where there's work to do. So that takes us into Bright Line Healing 2. The first two pillars we do in Bright Line Healing 1, and of course it's divided into two parts. The second two pillars are Bright Line Healing 2. So we've called Bright Line Healing 2 Becoming Whole, which is a little bit of a tricky name because it's not so much about becoming anything as it is about reclaiming the wholeness that is already there and totally available for you to claim. But Bright Line Healing Part 2 begins with Pillar 3, which is forgiveness. And we get really into what forgiveness is and is not because it's a tricky concept. It's loaded for a lot of people. But for the purposes of this intro, I want to tell you that forgiveness has zero to do with being nice and everything to do with being free. So forgiveness is really something that we do for ourselves. We practice forgiveness because ultimately it's the only way to kind of unbind ourselves from the shackles that tie us to our past resentments and hurts. So, Lily Tomlin said famously that forgiveness is giving up all hope for a better past. And I think that's pretty much right on the money. So forgiveness is not about forgetting or opening ourselves up to be hurt or abused. It's about acknowledging and voicing hurt and then taking responsibility for our part in kind of carrying our burdens forward. And in Pillar 3 in forgiveness, we lay out a really clear process for working through the process of forgiveness, which is a process of grace and not force. So we do it in a gentle way with a lot of support. Because forgiveness is sometimes a quick thing and sometimes it's slow. It depends where you are. But one thing that's really cool about forgiveness is that as we begin to see that the people who hurt us did so out of unconsciousness, we can start to locate the places in us that have been unconscious, where we hurt other people. And as much as this can be kind of painful, it also allows us to recognize our shared humanity. And basically, forgiveness is what happens when we recognize really deeply the cost of remaining a victim, and then allow ourselves to grieve the past and move through the process toward freedom. So we do it for freedom, and we do it with lots of support. So we help people discern the level of support they need and kind of work through it in a way that's right for them. And that's something we offer again and again throughout this course is a lot of support, and also a lot of reminding you that we trust you to know what's right for you. There's a proven connection between forgiveness and health that Susan goes into in the Science of Forgiveness webinar. A teacher I know says that life is designed to bring up what's been bound up so that it can be freed up for life. And that's absolutely my experience with forgiveness work, with all of this work, is that this stuff that's been bound up, literally sometimes in our bodies, in our thinking, in our whole way of operating in the world, often unconsciously. Life is designed to push on that. And sometimes that looks like pain, and sometimes that looks like just a nudge. Sometimes that looks like an inner knowing. But life is designed to bring that up so that it can be freed up, so that that energy that we've been holding can move along, so that life can move through us again in a freer way. And that brings us right to pillar 4, which is connection. So as I mentioned, this is not a straight line. It's more of a spiral path. And so awareness is inextricably linked to surrender, which goes with forgiveness. And connection is about exploring the overlap. It's about exploring what ties all these things together, as well as exploring new avenues of connecting to the capital S self, the true self. In my experience, it's like deep connection to self begets deep connection out in the world. And we talk a lot about that, how that works in the course, and people are amazed to see how true that is. So this pillar is about relationships, about connecting out there. We explore connection to the physical body. We look at the impact of trauma and the way that it can disconnect us from our bodies. And that can include larger traumas, capital T traumas, and also smaller traumas, just the trauma of stored up stress from living in a culture that is a pretty stressful place to live, and often a disconnected one. We learned some basic nervous system regulation skills in this pillar to help to establish a sense of safety and embodiment, sense of safety actually physical in the body. A lot of us are walking around that experience of anxiety, a chronic stress response that's turned on. And we don't even know it sometimes. We work on identifying resources, both inner and outer resources that ground and anchor us in that sense of deep safety, which again is what allows us to be more available for the present moment, because we don't feel like we have to close in on ourselves and protect ourselves all the time. We're not bracing against a threat. So we examine, as I said, what it means to connect with others while remaining deeply connected to ourselves. We work with positive boundaries. So we talk about clear and honest communications. We talk about the cost of seeking love, approval, and appreciation. We work with a lot in this pillar. We work with a lot in this course. I'm always kind of amazed as I look at a bird's eye view. We do cover a lot. This is a life's work, right? This is a life's work. We have folks who are taking this course for the third time this coming round. because it is that like layer after layer after layer after layer. And the aim of this pillar is to connect you deeply with your sense of self, with an unshakable sense of self that's beyond concepts, beyond comparison, a sense of self that isn't constantly being held up against a ghost image of what you imagine you should be, or who your mother or father thought you should be. That image of yourself that's better, more spiritual, thinner, smarter. It's connection to that true self, which when we touch it, we know it needs no improvement. So, why do this inner work? I think that's a really important question, because you don't have to, unless you do. Some of us do. I feel like some of us, there's not. The choice point was a while ago. But maybe it sounds kind of scary and hard as I lay out these pillars, and it is sometimes. The foundational practice that we work with throughout the course is really learning to hold that unconditional, loving presence for whatever shows up. And that's a big practice, and we build capacity to do that by practicing. And there's some very specific ways to do that. So this is about learning to stay when we've habitually run or tried to escape, which is what we tend to do as humans. It's just the way that we're wired. It makes a lot of sense, so we can have compassion for it. And again, we can build our tolerance for staying with ourselves, not continually self-abandoning. So this inner work journey, it can be joyful and expansive, and it often is. But it's not always comfortable. So as I said before, people are often motivated to do this kind of work because they're in pain. And they know that they need a new way of being in the world. I know that was certainly my experience, and continues to be. When I find myself in pain again, it's like, oh yeah, there must be something else here to be seen. That's not usually my first reaction, actually. It's like, oh goodness. But then ultimately, yeah. But once you get a taste of this new way of being in the world, this present moment engagement, you really can't unknow it. It's like once you stepped on this path, and many of you have already stepped on this path in your own way, in your own time, there is no turning back. So I guess we do the inner work because we're called to it. And we're called to it by suffering or by some other form of grace, just an inner call. And we keep doing it because it reveals this whole other world. It takes the veils from our eyes. And it turns out that the inner work confers all sorts of benefits that are being proven out by science. And we love to see that, we love to see measurable, tangible things. So the 4 pillars, again, are awareness, surrender, forgiveness, and connection. And we'll give you a chance to ask questions. So anything, just write down a note if there's a question you have about any of that. But I'm going to turn it over to Susan now, because she's going to give you a little bit of a sample of what some research is showing about some of the themes I just talked about. It's exciting stuff, and we all love to hear Susan's science. So over to you, Susan.
See there. Cool. Thank you so much, Molly. Oh my goodness, I'm yellow. I'm going to share my screen now. And here we go. Going through, it should say the science of the inner work. The science of the inner work. And in the Bright Line Eating Bootcamp, which I know that you may or may not have done, but in the Bright Line Eating Bootcamp, our narrative is if you eat this way and you build these habits, you'll get happy, thin, and free. That's sort of our tagline around here, happy, thin, and free. And that is true for starters. I stand by that. That's true. But after you put down the food, what happens for a lot of us is that things come up. And when things come up, many of us feel called to do the inner work. And if you don't personally do Bright Line Eating, you may similarly have come to a place in your life where you're feeling called to do the inner work. And as Molly just talked about, thank you, Molly, the inner work is characterized by these 4 pillars, right? Awareness, surrender, forgiveness, and connection. So it starts with awareness. And what I want to talk about now is, so what? Like, what does awareness afford us? Awareness for what purpose? For what benefit? And in order to answer that question from a scientific perspective, I want to introduce to you a researcher, a psychologist named Barbara Fredrickson. And she's a professor of psychology and director of the Positive Emotions and Psychophysiology Lab at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. So PEP, Positive Emotions and Psychophysiology Lab. She calls it the PEP Lab, PEP. And part of the research that's come out of her lab was written up in a book a few years ago called Love 2.0, in which she presents a new theory of love, like literally a new theory of what love is. And I want to start off by introducing you to this new idea. You may have heard me talk about this before. It's a concept that I love to talk about. And it introduces us to a new notion. What is love? A new answer to that question. So the conventional perspective on love is that love is something magical and passionate. It's sort of wrapped up in sexual desire and infatuation, maybe the idea of being soulmates or living happily ever after. And it's equated with intimate relationships. In other words, it's exclusive. It's reserved for your inner circle. And it's a bond. It's a lasting bond, commitment, loyalty, fidelity. And it's also unconditional, because the idea in the conventional perspective is that we love no matter what. The people whom we love them unconditionally. So that leads us to be accepting and tolerant and forgiving. That's sort of the conventional perspective of love. And Barbara Fredrickson presents this new perspective that redefines love as shared micro moments of connection, shared micro moments of positive emotion. She says that, there's all kinds of positive emotions, whether joy or humor, but love is what happens when you share that positive emotion in the moment with someone else. And what that means is that if you sort of break that down, it challenges some of those preconceptions. So it means that love is not necessarily exclusive, because opportunities for love exist all the time, everywhere, even maybe with people we've just met. That moment maybe when you're interacting with a stranger, say at the checkout line at the grocery store, and you make eye contact and share a smile and share some positive emotion with that person. Barbara Fredrickson would say, you could call that love, like right there. So love is not necessarily exclusive. And if love is a shared micro moment of connection in the moment, it's not lasting, it's fleeting. I mean, it's endlessly renewable. You can have it again and again, but because it's in the moment, by definition, it's fleeting. You need to recreate it every time because it's only available for you in the present moment. And it also challenges the notion that love is unconditional. Barbara Fredrickson says, actually, love has preconditions. I'm going to talk about that in just a second. So the 3 components that of love, the way she defines it, is shared positive emotion leading to biobehavioral synchrony. So if you look at this picture right here, these 2 people, notice that they're leaning in, their gestures are sort of mirroring each other. And if we put them in fMRI machines, we'd find that their brains are actually syncing up. Literally, their brainwaves are dancing together at the same time. And it creates a feeling of mutual care in the moment. So let's go back to that grocery store analogy. If you're connecting with the checkout clerk right there in the moment, laughing, smiling, eyes sparkling, and some kind of disaster happens right there, let's say horrible, like a bomb goes off in the corner of the grocery store, you would experience mutual care, meaning you wouldn't just flee yourself, but you would bring them with you. Like you would make sure that they were safe too. There's mutual care that's created in the moment when you're experiencing love with someone. So the preconditions for love are 2: safety, You have to feel safe in the moment to experience love. If you don't feel safe, your walls are up and you're not present in the moment, which precludes that shared positive emotion. You have to feel safe in order to feel love. And this is why we experience love more often with people that we have a bond with, because our walls are more likely to be down. We're more likely to feel safe with them. The other condition is connection. You actually have to be in a place of temporal and sensory contact in order to experience love. It's a right here, right now kind of thing. Now, her research shows that there are very concrete biological effects of experiencing love like this, especially frequently. One is, I already mentioned, biobehavioral synchrony. And Uri Hasson from Princeton University did a study where he put a college student in an fMRI machine, a brain scanner, and had her tell this elaborate story. She had a really intense prom night at the end of high school, where she had 2 dates by mistake, and they both showed up and she had to pick one, and the night ended up with a car crash and all kinds of crazy things happened. She told this whole story while her brain was being scanned. And then Professor Hasson put other people in the fMRI scanner and scanned their brains as they listened to the story. And what he found was that people who listened the most deeply and really connected with this woman telling this story and remembered the most about it, that their brains not only showed the same neural signature as hers, but even danced right along time with her. And the ones that remembered the most and were listening the most carefully, the ones who were most engaged, their brains actually anticipated where her brain was going. They were that tuned into her that they knew the story almost in advance. A really, really beautiful piece of research. And so there's other research from the HeartMath Institute showing that hearts sync up. Literally, our brains, our gestures, our facial expressions, and our hearts all sync up in the moment with someone when we're experiencing these micro moments of love. Other research has shown hormonal effects, specifically oxytocin, which is called the cuddle hormone. It's the hormone that's released massively during childbirth, during lactation, during sexual intercourse. But oxytocin also rises and falls just during, shared laughter. Any kind of moment of love is going to produce an oxytocin sync up. And the more you do that, the more your oxytocin signaling system gets tuned up, and the better able you are to, for example, discern whether someone's trustworthy or not. So again, we go back to the safety idea, right? To know when you're genuinely safe with someone and when you're not. So someone with a very in tune oxytocin system is wise about making themselves available for love more often in a safe way. And then there's other research on the vagus nerve. So there's something called vagal tone, which is the strength of the nerve that connects your brain down to your heart. It connects other things too, the brain to the gut, the brain to the lungs, but in particular, the brain to the heart. And what happens, usually vagal tone, the strength of that nerve is stable throughout life. But what Barbara Fredrickson's research is showing is that people who make themselves available for love more often, these shared micro moments of connection, their vagal tone gets stronger and stronger and stronger. And this connection of the brain down to the heart is actually mostly an upward connection, meaning it's the heart communicating with the brain, which is kind of intense, right? So their brain gets more attuned to knowing what their heart is doing and saying to them. And this is where we can talk about sort of living life not just from our brain, living life from our body, like understanding what our heart, what our gut is telling us at any given moment. The more you are aware in the present moment, making yourself available for love, the stronger your biological systems that support human connection become. And this makes you more capable of showing up for future connections. So it's sort of an upward spiral. The more you make yourself available for love, the stronger your biology gets, and the more available you're going to be in the future for love. It's kind of a beautiful upward spiral dance. So the inner work starts with awareness, which, again, if you're not aware in the present moment, you're missing opportunities for love all around you. Those moments are only present in the current moment. And as you cultivate awareness, then, as you can see, you become more available for connection. So now I want to address the question, so connection for what? Like, what's good about being connected to other people? And to answer that question, I want to take you deep. I want to take you cellular on the question of what does it afford us when we are really connected to ourselves and to the people in our lives. I want to talk about your DNA for a second and how what you're doing and the choices you're making right here today are going to impact you on the cellular level in the future, next month, next year, and beyond. The choices you make right here actually change your DNA for the future. Okay, let me describe this. This is work by Barbara Fredrickson and also by Steve Cole, who's at UCLA. He's a professor of medicine as well as psychiatry and biobehavioral sciences at the UCLA School of Medicine. So his research uses something called computational bioinformatics to map the biological pathways by which social environments influence gene expression. So this is pretty deep stuff. And he did a study that's known as a study on adversity and the genome. So he answers the question, what if we're not connected? What if we're not connected? What if we're isolated? What if we're lonely? And what if we're mired in the sort of anxiety or depression or isolation or the self-absorption, the sort of, basically the not feeling at home in ourselves, not feeling safe in ourselves that leads us to be isolated from others. So we've known for a long, long time that stressors like these have effects, like loneliness, for example, isolation. These stressors lead to poor health, unhappiness, decreased longevity. As a matter of fact, if you look at a health psychology textbook, there's a whole chapter on stress and all of the negative health implications. It just goes on and on and on. I mean, it's shocking, the things that stress is correlated. Likelihood of getting AIDS, likelihood of getting Alzheimer's, likelihood of getting pretty much everything. And what's interesting is our current psychological health forecasts our future physical health. So the state of your psychology right now forecasts how physically healthy you're going to be in the future. So what's the mechanism for that? And this is what Steve Cole's research has shown us. The mechanism by which stressors like loneliness impact our health status. So in order to tell you about this research, I got to go back to some biology 101 for you, just make sure that you're caught up on what genes are and what they do. So when I'm in a classroom and I say, what do genes do? I usually get a lot of blank stares, maybe a couple of hands. Usually people are wrong. Every now and then there's someone who gets it right. Genes code for proteins. That's what they do. So the genetic code is your DNA, but your DNA, it's there on your chromosomes in every single one of your cells. There's your full genetic code lying there in your cells, but the genes are dormant in and of themselves. They're dormant unless the messenger RNA comes and unlocks them and turns them into proteins. And proteins are the active things. Now, I'm not talking about protein like from a nutritional perspective. I'm talking about the protein molecules that serve as the catalyst for all of the chemical reactions that happen in our cells. So I'm talking about basically all of our cellular processes are regulated by these proteins, these catalysts. And that's what genes do. Genes code for proteins that run what's happening in our cells. And this is the process by which that happens. There's the DNA, and then there's two things that happen. Transcription, which is when the RNA unlocks the genes and turns them on, and then translates them into proteins. Okay, so transcription and translation. So this transcription is the process of making your genes come alive and actually do something. If transcription never happens, the genes just lie dormant. They don't do anything. So you could have genes for all kinds of things, obesity, schizophrenia, and if transcription never happens, doesn't matter. It's as if you don't even have the gene because they're just lying there dormant. So transcription is what turns those genes on and makes them active, makes them have an impact. So transcription is what we're going to really focus on here. And here's a schematic from Steve Cole's paper from 2013. And it's a little complicated, but I'm going to walk you through it. It's actually pretty simple. Basically, there's stuff in our environment, our social environment, and in particular, we're going to talk about stressors here. So it could be like pollutants, things, like mold or lead or, sort of stressors in the physical or built environment. And these are then molecules that go to our cells, they bind at the cell membrane, and then they start a process that affects transcription factors that turn on our genes. And boom, genes that were lying dormant are now becoming active and coding for proteins. And so these stressors in the environment are actually making our genes, certain genes, come alive and have impact in our cell. Okay, so that's one pathway. The other pathway is through our brain, like social. So this could be like stressors like an overbearing and overprotective mother who stresses you out, or a friend who betrays you or whatever. And your central nervous system has a reaction to that, like the fight or flight response you've probably heard of. So this is like the endocrine system. This is hormones. The fight or flight response is the sympathetic nervous system. So we could be talking about cortisol, which is a stress hormone, or ACTH, another stress hormone. And these molecules also bind at receptors and impact transcription factors that then turn on our genes. So stress of the sort of psychological variety affects the waking up of our genes and turning them into proteins that then affect how our cells function. So let me show you how this works, like on a pretty profound level here. Let's talk about the impact that this has. So here's the study that Steve Cole did. Steve Cole and his colleagues, they found 14 older adults who differed significantly in their subjective reports of isolation. So this was literally like a survey. Do you feel isolated or do you feel connected? Do you feel lonely? Over years, they gave these surveys, older adults, and they selected out 8 people who consistently reported social connectedness. Like, they were responding to surveys. I'm loving and being loved. I've got great friends. I feel really connected. I feel really loved. Over a period of 4 years, they consistently reported social connectedness. And then they found 6 people over those same 4 years who consistently reported social isolation. So I feel lonely. I feel disconnected. I don't feel wanted. I don't feel connected, right? Over 4 years. And those people, those 14 people, were the subjects for this study. So then what? What did they do? Then they took those 14 people and they scanned their DNA, their whole genome. We're talking about all 23,000 genes. And then they used a heat plot to see the genes' fingerprints, meaning which genes were actually being turned on and which ones weren't, which ones were active and which ones were dormant. And through just a mathematical brute force examination, they found 200 genes that showed clear systematic differences in gene expression between the lonely and the connected people. 200 genes that were different in how they were being expressed, whether people were lonely or connected. And by gene expression, we mean downregulated, like being suppressed, like those genes are not really doing anything, they're not coding for proteins, or upregulated, meaning those genes are now more active than usual, and they're coding for proteins like mad, like they're having a big impact at the cellular level. So when I'm going to show you the data now, it's super cool. Each row in this data is a person, and each column is a gene. So here's the 200 genes going across the top here, okay? And these are the lonely people, and these are the connected people, okay? So these are those 200 genes that differ between the lonely people and the connected people, So in this case, red means high expression. The red is genes that are upregulated. They're more active than usual. And then the black is intermediate, and then the green is low expression. These are the downregulated genes, the genes that are not having an impact. They're being suppressed. Okay? So that's all fine and good, but then the question is, yeah, all right, what are these genes? What are they doing in the cell? What does it impact if you're lonely versus connected? Well, over here, the connected people, these genes over here, in the connected people, they're being expressed a lot. They're having a big impact in the cell. And the lonely people are experiencing these genes being suppressed, being downregulated. And these, it turns out, these 131 genes are genes that regulate our immune response. So for example, they're the genes that impact immunoglobulin G production. Well, what's that? It's our most common antibodies. So the lonely people are experiencing suppression of their antibodies, and the connected people are experiencing upregulation and strengthening of their antibodies, their immune system. Or type 1 interferon arrival response. This regulates our entire immune system. So you can see the connected people, they're experiencing a strengthened immune system by very virtue of being connected. The lonely people are experiencing a shutdown of their immune system by very virtue of their being isolated and lonely. Okay, so let's look over here, these 78 genes that are having opposite profile, right? These genes are upregulated in the lonely people and suppressed or downregulated in the connected people. Turns out these are the genes for inflammation. And we all know inflammation is, a big player in heart disease and rheumatoid arthritis and cancer. So the lonely people are experiencing more inflammation, and the connected people are experiencing suppressed inflammation just by virtue of their human connection. Powerful stuff, right? Now, I just want you to remember, it's subjective, not objective isolation that predicts this. So it doesn't really matter like how many people you're seeing, how many phone conversations, how often you go out to lunch with people. It's your subjective feeling of being connected to people in this world or feeling lonely and isolated from people. And so based on, for example, whether you're an introvert or an extrovert, you're going to have different needs in terms of just the absolute magnitude of connection that's going to qualify as making you feel, well-loved and well-connected. So just keep in mind that it's your perception of that that's driving this. So just this little taste of science shows us that it's all interrelated. It's all interrelated. So the more we show up to do the inner work, the more aware and connected we become, the more we make ourselves aware so that we're present for those micro moments of connection, those love shots, those little moments of biobehavioral synchrony. And the more connected we become to the people around us and to ourselves. And when we're aware and connected, we're more available for those micro moments of love right here, right now. We're more in tune with others, with ourselves, with nature, with the divine order of things. And what happens then is that our genes for health get turned on and our genes for ill health get suppressed. And we find ourselves becoming the best version of ourselves, living our purpose in the world. We find ourselves becoming free from the inside out. So, this stuff. Okay. So what I want to do now is pass it back over to Molly. She's going to tell us a little bit more about Brightline Healing, and in particular, what it is and what it isn't. Because, I think there can be misconceptions when it comes to a course like this, especially for those of us who do therapy and other types of things. So, Mal, yeah, what is Brightline Healing? What is it and what is it not?
I'm going to try one more time, Susan, to share my screen, see if I sorted it out. Okay, we are not having PowerPoints today. That's all right. So Bright Line Healing, yeah, and we'll give you a chance to ask questions, as I said, to clarify a little more about what it is and isn't, but just some broad brush strokes. What it is an incredibly comprehensive course to do the inner work. We find, and we've gotten feedback, that this course is very accessible for someone who's brand new to the inner work, and at the same time, it offers challenge and depth to folks who are veterans of this path, who have done all kinds of stuff. In fact, we do tend to attract a lot of people who have kind of been there, done that with a lot of things, a lot of inner work kind of tools. We find that this is a beautiful complement to any healing path, any spiritual practice. There's no conflict here. Whatever your beliefs may be, whether you consider yourself a seeker or not, whether you're religious or not, there's a very wide way here. What it is a very supportive community. We really amazingly gather from all across the world, and we're able to create a really supportive community with lots of actual personalized coaching with both myself and then Benjamin, who I'll introduce you to in a moment, who supports us in the Facebook house. So there's a lot of hands-on in this course. And just as importantly, what it's not. This is not a substitute for therapy. It's also not therapy. I mean, that's pretty obvious, but it's worth saying. It's a great complement to therapy, but it's not designed to address deep trauma. I would certainly say that the course is trauma informed. That's an area of focus for me. I'm really interested in trauma and trauma healing. So I do my best to make sure that the course feels very safe and supportive, and also just teach some about the impact of trauma and what we know about trauma these days. But this course, of course, because it's not, we're not able to be in the room with each person, it's not able to address deep trauma. So if that's happening for you, if you have deep trauma that's untreated, unless you're going to be really closely doing therapy along with this work, this kind of stuff can be triggering. So I would suggest going and getting the support you need first. And as you probably have gathered, this isn't like a 5-step formula. It's not like do this, do that, and you're going to sail off into the sunset. We always turn you back on your own inner wisdom. Our hope is to show you, to remind you how to access that really clear inner authority and to trust and follow that. So we're not here to offer you some formula that you can, take from the outside and swallow whole. Instead, we're here as friends and guides along the path. So we offer a lot of support. We point the way, and you are the expert of your own experience always. And people ask, what's my commitment? Like, what would be expected of you? Ideally, we would love to have everyone spending 30 to 60 minutes a day on this work. Now, we realize that people's schedules often don't allow that, and it's fine. We have people, we've been through this course enough times now that we've seen people who just skim the surface and still manage to experience quite a powerful shift. And then we have folks who really stick with it. And again, folks who come back again for a second or a third time to go deeper and deeper. And when we say 30 to 60 minutes, we invite folks to have an awareness practice, and many of you may already have that established. If you don't, and you've long wanted to have a regular meditation practice or a regular writing practice, this is an opportunity. We provide a lot of support to structure that for yourself. And then some time for inquiry, to bring some of the questions, some of the work that we are exploring in the course into your day. So optimally, that ends up being somewhere between 30 minutes and an hour. Some people spend a couple hours on the weekends because they can't do more than just keep up with the basic course during the week. It doesn't really matter as long as you're committed to the daily practice of actually integrating what you're learning from your own experience. Like you take in the information that we're offering, you take in the practices, and then you integrate them, in small doses daily. Consistency really trumps big, bold strokes here. We want to give you a lifelong toolkit that you can use to go inside and uncover what's been waiting to be seen. So we find that insight without integration really doesn't take us very far. So the course is really about integration. So your commitment is to engaging with the work, basically. The course, as I mentioned briefly, is 2 parts. There's Brightline Healing 1, Coming Home, and that is 8 weeks. And then we take a little break and we do Brightline Healing 2, Becoming Whole. You're going to want to do them all. You're going to want to do all 4 pillars because it really is it creates, it's nice to close the loop. But you can certainly, we offer an opportunity for folks to sign up just for the first part and check it out, see what you think before you jump in for the second part. But altogether, it's 16 weeks. We take a little break in the middle. We do our best to create an experience that's quite spacious, but that also offers enough to keep you engaged, really, and go deep. So it's a powerful experience. And the culmination of Brightline Healing 1, the first 8-week program with the awareness and surrender pillars, is an at-home retreat. And people love this. We've gotten so much positive feedback about the surrender retreat. We spend a day all together, all over the world, or part of a day, if that's what people can do, for an at-home guided retreat. And we check in throughout the day with different practices and offerings, and it's really a magical day. I always look forward to the surrender retreat. So that's an opportunity for us to kind of really do a deep integration and to practice as a community the things that we've experienced, with the things that we've learned, to really cement in this new way of being. So before we go any further, I want to introduce Benjamin, who is my co-facilitator here, my partner in crime, and one of my dearest friends. So we're really lucky here that the 3 of us get to spend a lot of time together. And Benjamin and I went through the course with a fine-tooth comb. Benjamin is a writer and a teacher, and so he's brilliant at streamlining and clarifying. And he also has a lot of experience of doing the inner work himself. So he has a lot of coaching experience as well. He doesn't, it comes in a different package, but basically I trust him implicitly. Benjamin is there on Facebook offering a lot of hands-on coaching, breaking things down. I'm in there too quite frequently, but most often I find Benjamin gets there and says exactly something along the lines of what I would have shared before I get there. And, above all of that, he's just a human with deep compassion and integrity and a real strong commitment to walking his talk when it comes to this inner work. So Benjamin, can you come on along? I don't know if Susan, you need to share us here. There he is. Hey.
Hey.
So Benjamin, you want to introduce yourself and just share a little bit, and anything that you think I might have left out. Benjamin is like my second brain, so.
Yeah, no, I think you guys have done a great job. It's been so great to hear these presentations again, to be reminded. Molly and I often joke that the benefit of doing the inner work in community with peers is that they get to remind you of the same things that you forget over and over and over again. And that's one of the things that we really have to offer here at Brightline Healing, is a community of support where people can say, when we are struggling, me too, or that sounds familiar, or I've been there, this is hard. To tell you a little bit about myself, Molly mentioned my kind of professional background is as a writer and an editor and an educator. I spent the last couple of years teaching at the University of Arizona in Tucson, Arizona. And like Molly and Susan, have really, in terms of the inner work, have really been schooled by suffering. I, like Susan and Molly, found recovery when I was 24 years old. So almost a decade of recovery experience from drugs and alcohol. And that really has shaped my world perspective, my interpersonal relationships, and my approach, not just as a writer, but I would also say as a teacher. We've talked a lot about this idea that Bright Line Healing is not a self-improvement program. And I think it's probably one of my favorite taglines for the course, which is probably why it's come up so much. And I just want to touch on that a little bit, and then Susan will give us the specifics of the course about what makes this program distinct from other sort of self-help oriented program out there. Because I actually think, and Molly mentioned this, is that it's a fundamental and relatively radical approach to the inner work. And what I mean by that is, when I was suffering, when I was trapped sort of in active addiction, the thing that if I had to sort of distill down what was my kind of core struggle, it was with this idea of the deficient self. And this is something that we talk a lot about in the course, the myth of the deficient self, which is the self that is not good enough. And you can fill in that blank, whatever that may be, not smart enough, thin enough, loved enough, promoted enough, strong enough, educated enough, whatever it may be. And it took me a really long time to arrive at a place in this work where I suddenly realized that myth is a myth, and that our sort of wholeness, our worthiness is a non-negotiable. It is sort of a birthright we have as being human. And that what happens when we fall into this trap of thinking that we are somehow less than or deficient is that we begin to manage, manipulate, control, avoid. We engage in all of these strategies to cope with what it feels like to live in a world where we are perpetually not good enough. And a lot of that will manifest as addiction or compulsive behaviors. It can manifest as depression or anxiety, distorted relationships with other people, distorted relationships with self. And the problem with I would say my concern with sort of this self-help approach is that it actually perpetuates this idea of the deficient self. It says that you're here, and we want to get you here, and this is how we do that. But in my experience, I was really good at trying to get here, and I was not very good at staying here in the present moment with the self and learning to experience discomfort and vulnerability that did not mean that I was not worthy. So I would say that the course is pretty radical in that it says that we say in this course that we're going to stay. We're going to stay with the discomfort. We're going to stay with the vulnerability. And we're going to learn to live in a place where nothing is wrong. And we do that, obviously, through these 4 pillars that Molly so beautifully outlined: awareness, surrender, forgiveness, and connection. So it's such a pleasure to be here. always good to be with Molly and Susan. We hope that you'll join us. And Susan, I'll toss it back to you to outline the specifics of the course.
Thanks, Benjamin. Beautiful. Okay, let me see if I can get my screen share to work. My screen share seems to be working fine. Right there. Okay. All right. So just briefly now, and then we're going to get to Q&A, which I'm excited about. But we do have an invitation for you. We are opening up registration again for Brightline Healing. And as Molly and Benjamin have said, it's a 2-part course. So Brightline Healing 1 is coming home. Brightline Healing 2, becoming whole. And just to remind you, why we created this course in the first place is because all the stuff that comes up when you put down the food, right? The anxiety, fear, insecurity, struggles with the bright lines, guilt, shame, other people noticing your weight loss, trouble with forgiveness, difficulty letting go, over busyness, other addictions, challenging relationships, wounds from the past, sexuality, coming to see ourselves in our new, smaller bodies, challenges meditating and sitting with the present, the unhelpful stories we tell ourselves, feeling small and less than, feeling pulled to something higher but not sure how to get there. All that stuff that comes up when we put down the food will keep you from living happy, thin, and free forever unless you engage with this inner work. And because, even if using food to cope with life isn't your go-to behavior, if you don't do Brightline eating, but if you're human, you may have noticed that it's not so easy to navigate anxiety, fear, insecurity, guilt, shame, trouble with forgiveness, difficulty letting go, over busyness, addictions, challenging relationships, wounds from the past, sexuality, challenges meditating and sitting with the present, the unhelpful stories we tell ourselves, feeling small and less than, feeling pulled to something higher but not sure how to get there. It's a human thing. I think really this is why we open up Brightline Healing to everybody. And this course is not about Brightline eating. This course, it doesn't matter if you do Brightline eating. It doesn't matter if you don't even know what Brightline eating is. This course stands alone. It's entirely separate. And it's a course for anyone who wants to become free from the inside out. Because, right, all this stuff is challenging. Like, this is the stuff of life. This is the stuff that comes up. And we need a framework for being free in the midst of it, for feeling competent and resilient and whole and present in the midst of all this stuff that makes up life. And what we found, Molly and Benjamin and I, is that there just is no shortcut. There is no magic formula. There's no, do these steps, do these things, and, you get healed, boom, 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 you're done. And, honestly, I've been around the block. You won't find this out there. There are other paths and other processes, but this one is tailor-made for you. And your faculty in the course are myself and Molly and Benjamin. And it's 2 8-week courses, Brightline Healing 1, that is the first 2 pillars, awareness and surrender, and then Brightline Healing 2, that's the next 2 pillars, forgiveness and connection. And together they constitute a path to freedom from the inside out. It's a powerful curriculum for doing the inner work. So there's lessons and exercises provided throughout each week and sprinkled in with research-packed webinars. So you can get what they call your Susan Science Fix. There's going to be one for each pillar. I gave you a little tiny taste of that tonight. I go into lots of detail on the science of how these practices benefit your brain, your body. Research is showing more and more, like, for example, just the science on the benefits of meditation. And, it just goes on and on, but it's super exciting stuff. I love presenting this stuff. There's regular 2-hour coaching calls with Molly. Those are group coaching calls. And there's an amazing online support community where Molly and Benjamin are super present, giving targeted coaching, and the community steps in to support as well. And then, as Molly said, there's that full day guided at-home surrender retreat. If you think about the value of a course like this, a standard weekend workshop could cost several hundred to maybe even $1,000 or $2,000, plus travel, plus lodging. And this course is the equivalent of several, like multiple 3-day weekend workshops. There's no way to pack the experience of this course into just a 3-day weekend. So it would be, the equivalent of multiple 3-day weekend workshops, which puts the value of this course easily well into the thousands if you were going to do this in some other way. The financial investment for this course, Bright Line Healing Coming Home, is $497. Or you can do 3 monthly installments. And Bright Line Healing 2 is also $497, or you can do 3 monthly installments. But there's a package deal of Bright Line Healing 1 and 2 that's available right now for $100 off. So that's $897 for the full package, or 3 monthly installments of $337. Now, I just want to mention, if you're already in the inner circle with us, so like if you're a Bright Lifer, for example, or if you're a Bright Healer, which means you've been through Bright Line Healing before and you joined Bright Healers afterwards, or if you've done Bright Line Healing before, you didn't join Bright Healers, but you want to retake the course, I want you to go to your course website of the course that you're in, and then you'll see the Bright Line Healing banner and click there because you get a discount if you're already in the inner circle with us. I want to mention that there's a 100% satisfaction guarantee. So if you're not happy with the course, just let us know within 30 days and you'll get 100% of your investment back. So I really encourage you, if you feel called at all, to try it because there's zero risk. If you dip in and, any part of you says, oh yeah, no, this was a mistake, you can have all of your money back. We include a couple of targeted, amazing bonuses in this course. The first bonus is a guided meditation bundle because people always ask for more meditations from Molly. She does beautiful, beautiful, powerful guided meditations. So we're including a meditation bundle to get you started. And the second bonus is a journaling guidebook. This is an introduction to different methods of putting pen to paper, different methods of journaling. So for example, one method is writing to access your intuition. Another method is writing to heal. Very targeted, specific ways of putting pen to paper for different results and different experiences. It's several of them. It's really, really powerful. So even if you're a seasoned writer already, seasoned with journaling, you're going to get so much out of this journaling guidebook. It's profound. It's brilliant. So the course is beginning like really soon. It begins on Wednesday, February 7th, with your first lesson from Molly. And just a short time later, I'm going to present the first webinar on the science of awareness. So it is time to hop in because we're getting started. Like this course is beginning really soon. The three of us have a really firm commitment to you. So here's our commitment to you. We will bring everything we have in service of your growth. We will stretch you, but not break you. We are here to serve you, not to please you. We will create a sacred space for healing. We will hold a vision of your wholeness until you can hold it for yourself. And if you dedicate the time and show up wholeheartedly, you will experience a deep transformation. We talked at length about whether we could promise that. And the key there is the if. If you dedicate the time and show up wholeheartedly, we feel convicted that we can promise you will experience a deep transformation. Now, whether that's the transformation you want to have, transformations aren't the kind of thing you can order up, like a short order cook, like order up. Okay, here it is. However, transformations happen in exactly the way that's right for us. And there is a profound transformation that's on offer here, a profound transformation. So we feel convicted. We can promise this. If you dedicate the time and show up wholeheartedly, you will experience a deep transformation. And we invite you to join us. We invite you to join us. So I'm putting the registration button on the right side of the screen. You should see it here. join us for Brightline Healing. You can register now. Now, I just want to say one last thing, which is that here, turning back on my webcam here. This course always sells out. It just does. This course sells out. So there are a limited number of spots, and it's a super popular course. And some like 7,500 people have registered for the website or something insane like that. So, and we're starting on Wednesday. So this is not the time to dilly-dally. If you are interested, go ahead and click that button and register now and claim your spot. It really is about claiming your spot. And the benefit of registering right now is that you'll get to sort of have a couple days to sort of, you know, just get psychologically ready, you know, for the experience that's coming your way. So yeah, I invite you to register, claim your spot. They go, these spots go for sure. This is just it's just a popular course because it's a good one. And I'm going to go ahead now and reactivate the chat box. Now, if you have a question, what I want you to do is hover your mouse over the box where you're typing and mark it as a question. You should put a big red box there and mark it as a question, because that will help us to see the question. And then Molly and Benjamin, if you want to come back on video, so the three of us are here. And if you have a question, let us know. Yeah, so we're going to need to just riff a little bit here, because I think the broadcast for you is like 30 seconds delayed, and it's going to take people time to type. So,
Susan, do you want to let them know about our event tomorrow?
Oh, yeah. So check your email, because we are doing a Facebook Live tomorrow. It's going to be super fun. So join us on Facebook tomorrow. I believe it's at 3 p.m. Eastern on the Brightline Eating Facebook page at 3 p.m. Eastern. And it's just going to be super fun. We're going to talk about more about our own journeys with the inner work, and like, especially in concrete terms, like how does that actually manifest in our lives today? What tools do we use? We'll take questions. It's going to be fun. It's going to be interactive. We're doing it in my living room. So the three of us are going to be together. We all live here in Rochester, New York. We're like best friends going back for years now. And so we're going to get together. The energy is always really fun. And yeah. So join us on Facebook Live tomorrow at 3 p.m. And we have a bunch of questions. So Kathy says, and I'm going to just lob these over to Molly and Benjamin. So I'll read the question, Molly or Benjamin, if you want to answer. Kathy says, if you haven't done Brightline Eating yet, is it okay to go ahead and do Brightline Healing? Is there a specific order in which these should be done? Curious what you think about that, Molly.
Oh, I mean, we have people do it every which way. So I think that, you know, what we said before was that it's really up to the individual. Like if you feel like, for some people, I think doing this course can really help to clarify what direction you want to go. If you want to, you know, get some space junk out of the way before you decide you're going to do Brightline Eating or you know, your next move. There's no prerequisite that you have to be in Brightline Eating. We have folks who are, folks who aren't. So it's really, really up to you, Kathy. So if you have like a more specific kind of concern, we might be able to address that, but absolutely not a requirement.
Yeah, totally. Kathy, so I guess what I would say is it is okay to go ahead and register for Brightline Healing. I would say that if food is kicking your butt right now, like if food's got you by the throat, then the Brightline Eating Bootcamp will provide relief for that right away. You know, it depends on how high you are on the susceptibility scale. Like if you're a 10 on the susceptibility scale and you're drowning with food right now, then I would say go into the boot camp, because it'll be hard to engage with the inner work while you're floundering like that. But if you're kind of twiddling along and yeah, you'd like to lose some weight, you know, if it's more like that, then I would say Brightline Healing, if you feel called to do it now, it would be fine. Like I would say, check in with your inner compass, like the still small voice deep inside you. and ask, like get some guidance from deep inside. If you feel called to do this, it's fine to do this first. Totally fine. Okay. Suzanne says, great presentation. Are the class times always on Wednesdays, and at what time? Well, they're all recorded, so you get to listen at any time. I don't know, Molly, are they always at the same time, or does it vary a little bit?
Do you want me to do it? Yeah. So I can give you a sort of outline of what the course entails would look like for a week. So for the 8 weeks, what happens is that we release 2 lessons a week, and that happens on a Monday and a Friday. And these are written posts that we supplement with interviews, video contents, links to other articles to read, and those can be done at your discretion. Earlier, we mentioned that we do encourage you to spend an hour each day in reflection period, and then to incorporate these lessons in that time as well. In addition to that, we usually do a 2-hour coaching call with Molly, and that is done on Tuesdays, usually in the afternoon Eastern time. Those change. Again, those calls are recorded, so if you're not able to make them live, if you're over in the UK, you can always access the recordings of them right on the website. You can also always email your questions in if you can't be on the call live, and Molly will respond to it. She'll read your question and then respond to it live on the call, so you can listen back to the call recording for that. On the weeks that we don't do coaching calls are the weeks that we do Susan Science webinars. So there are 2 weeks in each of the courses, part 1 and part 2, where we don't do a coaching call. Instead, we have Susan Science webinar on the pillar: awareness, surrender, forgiveness, or connection.
And there are a couple of weeks where the coaching call happens to fall on a Wednesday or on a Friday. So if it's just that, the Tuesday is never a good day for you, and you could arrange your schedule to make it to those odd ones, then that could work too. If you want it to be live.
And Andrea from the UK is saying, this is for me, but I'm in the UK 5 hours ahead of you. Is this doable? Yeah, it totally is. I mean, it's designed to work.
We got lots of
in anywhere in the world.
Yeah, we get lots of folks from the UK.
Yeah. Pamela has a cool question. How is the community convened? At a certain time, online, over video, asynchronously? How is the community convened?
We have a private secret, meaning that it's completely closed, and it's like, Facebook community. And so folks are on there all the time. I mean, we have, a lot of people. So there's not a particular time when people convene in the Facebook group, but if you post something in Facebook, you are bound to have eyes on it, to have responses to it same day. So usually within an hour, if not less. It's a pretty active community.
And then of course,
the live coaching calls are definitely another place.
We also organize on Facebook all of the lessons. We post a thread on Facebook that is dedicated to that lesson. So when people have questions about how to engage with the practices we're offering, or they feel they want some clarification, they post right in that thread. And that's how me and Molly really we work really hard to stay on top of the group discussion. It's important to us that if you post something, you will get a response from one of us, usually by the end of the day. It can be in the beginning, it can take a little bit longer as we all get adjusted, but as soon as we settle into a rhythm, it actually works out really nicely.
A couple of people are asking if we're going to do a Brightline Healing book. Aletta, New Zealand, much love. Mary asked that as well.
Stranger things have happened. Who knows? What do
you think, guys? You want to read the book? Oh, I will say I was just hanging out with Reed Tracy, who's the CEO of Hay House, my publishing company. We're in a mastermind group together, and I was just with him, and oh my gosh, he's hammering on me to write another book, because Brightline Eating is it's a popular book. Like, people buy it, and he's a seller of books, so he wants me to write another book. I think, okay, you're hearing it here first. I think the next book is actually going to be a cookbook. We need to get out a cookbook.
Oh.
And we're probably going to greenlight that project sooner rather than later. But a Brightline Healing book would be cool. Yeah.
The only thing I'll say I do want to say about the book is that I think Molly and I and Susan are all sort of firm believers that this work really is best done in community, is to do it with people. I can't really stress that part of integrating the inner work is to share that experience with other people. And when you have other people as a resource immediately available to you, there's no real substitute for that.
Yeah. Well said, Benjamin. A couple people have asked privately, but since more than one have, I thought I'd answer publicly. How, again, do you get the Bright Lifers discount? If you're a Bright Lifer, go to the Bright Lifers website, the website where you download the accountability calls and look at the calendar and all that, the Bright Lifers website, and there should be a banner right at the top that allows you to register for Brightline Healing. Yeah. And I think I don't know if it's Andrea or Andrea. There's always a ton of ways to pronounce that name, but she says, great, I'm in. So I just want to say welcome. Yay, welcome. Okay, let's see. There's still a bunch other questions.
I did see, Susan, just real quick. I saw a question asking when the second course, part 2, begins. So they run consecutively. We do the first course, first 8 weeks first. And then we take a break, usually about a 2-week break. And so right now, the tentative start date for Brightline Healing 2 is April 25th. And that is a Wednesday as well. We start on Wednesdays, just how the course is structured. And so that's the tentative date. Most likely will not change, but we're a little bit further out from that. So we don't have it completely cemented in just yet. But again, it's also important for people to know is that in order to take part 2, you have to complete part 1, because the skill set that we develop in the first 8 weeks in awareness and surrender serve as a real foundation for some of the difficult interpersonal work that we do in the second course. So if you are interested in the second course, by all means, sign up right now. But just know that you have to do the first course before you have access to the second.
Totally. A couple people, Betsy and Carla, are asking, will this be offered later in the year? Now is not good. So like Benjamin said, part 2 is being offered in April, and that's going to take us, into the early summer, I believe. And we do offer Brightline Healing. This is what is this, the 3rd or the 4th time we're offering it? So it will get offered again. But as of now, we do not have a date on the calendar for a future offering. I mean, it'll come. But so yeah, if you can rearrange things to do it now, great. If not, trust it'll come around again. But we don't have a date for you. Bonnie says, I still work full time. Are the calls always recorded? Yes. Absolutely everything can be done at your convenience when it's good for your schedule. And in particular,
and to reiterate,
say it again.
I just want to reiterate what Benjamin said, that you can also send in a question. So even if you can't make it live, you can still get coaching. And we do coaching all day long on Facebook.
Andrea says, she's so cute. If you have time, please run through the schedule again. Been busy signing up and paying. So happy. Dreading the forgiveness bit. Ha.
Huh? We hear that a lot. And then people get there and they're like, this is okay. It's not so bad. But with more information about the schedule will come very quickly. I don't know if we want to take the time to go over the whole schedule.
It starts on Wednesday. The assignments are released Monday and Friday. Coaching calls are usually Wednesday, but not always, I think. Yeah. And it's 8 weeks. The first one, 2-week break, 8 weeks, the next one.
You'll get lots more info, Andrea, now that you signed up.
Yeah. Susan says, if one hasn't signed up for Brightline Eating yet, but want to, can you get a discount on this course if you sign up at the same time? We don't have it's really a technology issue. We don't have that linked up. So unfortunately, no. You sign up for this. The discount that's available now is do Brightline Healing 1 and 2 as a bundle, and that knocks $100 off the investment. Brenda has a great question. Hi, how individualized can one expect if the class size is hundreds to thousands of people? Well, it's not going to be thousands because for exactly that reason. But there are going to be a lot of people, but this is like full-time work for us. So, but yeah, Molly and Benjamin, do you want to speak to that? How individualized can they expect?
I mean, Molly, you're muted.
You're muted, Molly.
Okay. I'll just say this quickly, and Benjamin, then you can come in too. I was so concerned about this when I first created the course, and when we first sold it, it was like it sold out. Like it went so fast that I was like, how are we going to possibly give people the level of support we want to give them? And so we do cap the course, as Susan said. So that's one thing. We do cap it, but still, there are a lot of people, and amazingly, we are able, I feel like, to deliver a lot of personalized. I can think of twice that I haven't been able to answer everybody's questions on a coaching call, and then I have reached out to them with an email or scheduled a time for them to come on the next call. So, and then I have Benjamin. So there's two of us. This is our work. So there's a lot of support, and then the community support. There's a lot of personalized kind of holding in that environment too.
I just want to give you an example. So a while back, someone in our community reached out to me because she had some business expertise that she wanted to lend to the Brightline Eating movement, and I ended up meeting with her for breakfast. And amazing woman in the Silicon Valley area. And I'm talking with Molly. Molly and I are friends, so we were talking, and I mentioned this woman, and she's like, "Oh, I know her. She did Brightline Healing." And then she told me all of she's like, "Oh yeah," and she knew her. You know what I mean? Like Molly and Benjamin get to know the people in the course. Like it's these are not like abstracted, on a computer screen. Like these are like, they will get to know you and they will guide you through the process for sure. Yeah. Okay, I don't see any other questions marked as questions. I just want to, okay, Jill says, thank you. I've signed up for Healing 1. Can I sign up for the course anytime before it starts in April? Thanks so much for creating the community.
She's asking if she can sign up anytime.
Yeah, she can. We'll do after the first course. We send out emails to let everyone know if you haven't signed up for the second course, you can register at that time. The only issue there is that you're not eligible for the discounted rate if you buy them as a package.
Yeah. So yeah, Jill, basically right in between, in that 2 weeks stretch of time, we'll let everyone who didn't sign up for Brightline Healing 2 sign up at that point. Yeah. Pamela
we try to be...
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, we try to be really accommodating. Like we, I don't know how we can express that. But, Molly and I really, we all really believe in this work. And I think that we really believe in our ability to help people. So anything that we can do within the confines of some really healthy boundaries, we're usually willing to do. So we want to make sure that people know if they don't sign up for the second course right now, because they don't know if they're really interested in that investment, that they'll definitely get signed up. We've had people who have missed the emails and then gotten them registered for the second course in hindsight. We've had people who haven't, obviously Molly said, haven't been able, on very rare occasion, gotten their question answered or wanted to discuss it more. And we've reached out to them personally. I know the woman that, I've never had this conversation with Susan before, and I know exactly who she's talking about when she tells that story. So we really do try to be present and available and do anything that we can help, even if you're just having trouble with your password, getting into the website. Like 9 times out of 10, I'm the person who will get you that information.
Yeah, totally. Let's see here. Pamela says, can we register a friend as a gift? Pamela, try going to the registration form and just typing in their information and using your credit card. If that doesn't work, then go to the following URL. Go to support.brightlineeating.com. Support.brightlineeating.com and say that you want to register a friend for Brightline Healing. And you've still got, a couple days till Wednesday, so you've got some time. But I think it should work if you just use your credit card, but their email address and their contact information and so forth. I think, but I'm not a techie person, so I don't know for sure. But support.brightlineeating.com. I know that we do have people all the time who pay for other people to take our courses, so I know that we've got that one sorted. I'm just not 100% positive, but. And then Tracy says, if I don't register right now, but instead on Monday, where do I find the register now button? So Tracy, because you registered for this webinar, you'll get emails that'll have a link so that you can register. And people are asking also about, like, they missed part of the live stream. They were interrupted during the live stream. Is it recorded? It is recorded, and you'll get a link to the recording afterwards. So you could watch this live stream again and register off the recording, or you'll be getting emails that have both a recording and also the link to register. So over the next 2 or 3 days, we'll be filling up the class and you'll get emails. So if you want to hop in, again, if you really want to see, register tonight, because, that guarantees you a seat. But but you'll be getting emails. Let's see. I think Andrea says, love you. Thank you. Love you guys. I'm so excited. So sweet. Yay. Judith says, I'm in. Welcome, Judith.
Hey, welcome.
Yay. Judith. Yay. I think we've got everybody. Tracy says, thank you. Y'all are very detailed in your help. I appreciate you. Thank you, Tracy. Thank you. Pamela says, I wish we'd known this was going to be recorded. I've been taking notes for a friend who registered but couldn't make it.
Oh, such a sweet friend.
I know, such a sweet friend. I will trust that those notes helped you absorb the material or will be useful somehow. That's so sweet. Oh, that's funny.
If questions arise, just a reminder to come hang with us tomorrow on Facebook.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. Come hang with us tomorrow on Facebook, 3 p.m. Eastern on the Brightline Eating Facebook page. Yeah, totally. Let's see. Any other questions coming in? I think that's it. Oh, thank you, everyone, for joining us. Thanks, Molly. Thanks, Benjamin.
Thanks, Susan.
Our Brightline Healing faculty here. Sweet, sweet, sweet to launch this course again. It's such a joy. It's such a beautiful gift we give to the world. Inviting people to engage in this process. Pamela says, thank you for all you do. Oh, someone just said she marked it private, so I'm not going to say who it was because it's private, but she says, you guys are amazing and beautiful souls.
Oh, so sweet.
I know. So sweet. All right. Yeah, join us tomorrow in my living room at 3 p.m. Eastern on Facebook for a Facebook Live. It's going to be fun. We always banter and laugh a lot when we get together. And then we are going to be doing this webinar again on Monday night. I forget what time, but I probably have it in my calendar.
It's at 7.
It's at 7, Benjamin. Yeah. Always on 7 o'clock on Monday night. So if know anyone else wants to check it out.
Yeah, and Molly and I will also be doing a last-minute Q&A at 7 p.m. Eastern Time on Tuesday. That is the night before the course starts. So if you have any last-minute questions or concerns, you can always find us there.
Beautiful.
Hopefully don't wait, though.
Hopefully don't wait.
Don't wait to sign up. You can come with your questions, but sign up first if you want to join us.
Yeah. Pam says, can I share the link to this live stream with a couple of friends who might be interested? Absolutely. Absolutely. You'll get an email with the link and you can just forward it to them and they should be able to link right up. And
we've had groups of friends do it together and sisters, and really love that experience.
Totally. Yeah. Because we in Bright Line Eating, we believe in this mastermind model, right? Where people get together as small groups and support each other through a body of work. We do that in the boot camp. It's available in Bright Line Healing as well. So it's a really nice thing to do. It's just sort of an ancillary support to band together with some people and just share your reflections as you go through the work. Absolutely. So Pam, I think just go through your email inbox and forward, because remember, we're doing this live again on Monday night. So get them a registration link, and they can register for the live one on Monday night, or you can forward them the recording of this one, either way. Yeah. Beautiful. All right, everyone. Well, I'm going to go to bed here. I got up in Utah at 3 a.m. to catch a flight. So I'm going to go to bed now. I did sleep a lot on the plane. I'm a good plane sleeper. Thank God. Love you, Molly and Benjamin. See you tomorrow in my living room. And bye, everyone. Thanks for joining us. It was sweet.
Thanks,
wonderful
guys.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks for your time and attention.